Okay, so we're going to go on to the new book. If you missed last week, the book is by Francois Tardieu, Backgammon Strategic Concepts. And in this book, he presents a number of very challenging problems. About a third of the book has to deal with the opening. And so while I put together just sort of a reminder, we've done a lot of the books that we covered also covered the opening. So I sort of brought together all the summaries of the basic things. So just to remind everybody what we did, we just did strategic visualization. This was by Mochi in the masterclass series, where he talks about priming versus blitzing formations, and back checker strategy. Michi wrote a whole book on back checker strategy, where he talks about the 5 stages or 5 stage, initial, advanced, complete stage, solo stage, and butterfly stage. Opening concept, Michi wrote a whole book on opening concept. I think one of the best books written on that. And so when we go over these positions, I'll frequently be referring to some of these. My own actually was David Presser's addition to this, but I sort of melded it as just splitting rules. I find it easier to remember splitting rules as a kind of a chunk. And whenever you think you might want to split, it's good to have the splitting rules. And we'll go over some times here where well, for all of these, they're tools to use. Sometimes they don't apply, or they can mislead you. And so we'll go through all of those. The other common thing too is kind of the bold, safe criteria, which is one that Paul McGrill came up with. And basically, you're going to play bold or safe depending on the condition. So if you have an anchor, you can play bolder. This actually contradicts something in back checker strategy, but then you ask who you have the stronger board. If you have a stronger board, you can play bolder as well, and you should play safer if your opponent has a strong board. And who has more checkers back, or otherwise winning the race. So race is important. Again, if you're winning the race, you should probably race. If you're not winning the race, you're going to play for contact. So all these ideas all represent, I guess, ideas or tools that we can use to figure out the right move to make in any position. And we'll find out through some of these examples that, well, if you've ever tried to apply them, you already know that they're not always unambiguous. And sometimes a couple of rules or rules of thumb come into conflict with each other, and you have to sort it out and assess your priorities. And that's pretty much what we have here. Well, in the positions that are in this book. So let's just start with the first, or actually this is the 7th one in the book. We did 6 last week. So we have a 6-4 to play. And so what are some reasonable plays to make, and what's the best one? There is a clear winner here. And what is it, and why?
I can see 3. We can race round to the 11 point. We can make our bar point, or we can make our 2 point.
Let's make it a 2 point.
And you can also make
no, I don't think there's anything else.
4. No, you're right.
Yeah, so those are the three positions. He did
I'd definitely make the bar point.
there was another one, but so yeah, so which is the best one though, and why? And
Right click the 2 point guy.
yeah, let me put this back. This one got back here. Yeah, so what do you think is better, and what are the things that we're looking at that would help us decide?
I mean, so just thinking out loud, I mean, I think making the 2 point looks like probably the wrong idea, because we still, we're still a little behind in the race. We still have to do a lot of work to get the back checkers out, and I don't think we can really follow up on the attack. So I'd look at one of the other plays out of the other two. I'm hesitant to play 21 to 11 when, we still have the checker back on the 24 point, and we're not even up in the race after that. So I think that just leaves making the 7 point, which looks best to me, but a low confidence.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of good things here. Yeah, it's almost always right. If you can point on your opponent and put him on the bar, it's almost always right to do that. And so it's hard not to do that. Particularly now when we're going to have a 3-point board against our opponent's 2-point board. But what's the drawbacks now? Max mentioned one of them being the race. Now you always have to factor in the race, pretty much. And we're even after this move. I guess after this move, we're even in the race. So, what's the other drawback of doing that play? So let's look at that play.
Well, it strips the 8-point.
Yeah, well, not strip. We broke the 8-point, so
Oh, yeah,
see
right.
more. But yeah, now we've given up the 8-point, so that's not great.
And we only have 9 in the zone, so it's not bad to blitz with 9, but it's not great. It's
Right.
not quite enough.
Yeah. And it's yeah, and just sort of a technicality, but it's good to remember too. It's not even 9 in the zone. It's
All right, yeah.
because we made the 5-point. This is 6 pips away. This isn't in the zone for a direct shot. So that's a small distinction worth being aware of.
Yeah, good point.
We consider it. I consider this like 8.5 in the zone. But yeah, 8.5 or 9 is not really that much big a difference. You would like to have 10 or 11 in the zone if you're going to blitz. So this is a blitzing play, and you don't really have the checkers in the zone to do it. It's still not a terrible play because black only has a 2-point board, but yeah, again, those would be reasons not to.
You're kind of dividing your checkers into separate camps, so the 2 back checkers are kind of stranded back there.
Yeah, I'm gonna add to that if I can. Not only are you dividing your checkers, but you have to bring men down. You now give yourself 2 things to accomplish. You need to anchor and you need to bring men down to support your attack. So
Yeah. All that leads to attacking may not be the right play here. Well, let's
on the other hand, 9 bad rolls for him, probably even more.
yeah. Which is why I say it's not a terrible play. This is the point. That's not it's not terrible. I mean, it's not the best. Obviously, not the best play, but the right play is to make the bar point. And this, the advantages of this are pretty clear. You got a nice 4-point prime. You now have 10 checkers in the zone where you can attack from this better now that you have 2 extra checkers in the zone if you want. The other thing too that is that if you're behind in the race, a good strategy is to prime, because being ahead in the race is not necessarily an advantage for priming. It's if you want to race, if you're ahead in the race, you race. If you're behind, you want to play for contact or priming. So that's part of it too. What Mr. Tardieu says in in his explanation, and I would say that some of the explanations I don't find quite adequate, and I would say this is they're pithy, but don't go into the depth too much. But the explanation for this one is a common theme we talked a lot about last week, but we'll see it often not. But what he says is that building the 4 prime from a 5-point to the 8-point in the first step is the first step in the creation of an even longer prime, which will guarantee you a long-term advantage. A lot of his examples are built on getting the long-term advantage, getting a position that is going to give you the advantage over the long term, even at the risk of maybe short-term disadvantages, or in this case, making the 2-point is a very aggressive attacking move, but when you going back to, wait, I didn't mention the Mochi's strategic visualization, the priming versus blitzing strategy, but you make the 2 point, you've committed yourself to a blitz, pretty much, because you can't really prime from there. And you don't have the checkers in the zone to carry out the blitz. Now you could get lucky, obviously you could get lucky. You've got 9 bad numbers for black. And in another roll too, you bring it more down, and you have a little ammunition. But I think that's all part of it. Is that recognition that you don't really making the 2 point is a blitzing move, and you really don't have the ammunition to carry out the blitz. So.
Well, the other good thing about this play is it still keeps the blitz open next time, depending on what black does, because now you've got 10 in the zone, and you can prime where you can blitz.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You have the flexibility, and even if all else fails, you still have a 4 prime, and that's a pretty strong structure. So yeah, that's all part of it too.
Gary,
Yeah.
why do you think that 2111 is a worse play than hitting?
Well, one is you're still behind in the race after that. And so that's a problem. 2, you're making 11 point is an important point to make, and these are I think more secondary. I think the primary one here is well, the primary one I think is you were still behind in the race, and that's sort of you bring your back check around. That's sort of a racing move. You're also making a point which is 6 pips behind the last point, or the most advanced point that you have. Generally, the value of that point is less. So in this case, having the 10 point would be more value because it's part of this prime.
Oh,
So it's less
okay.
there. Now, with a single checker back, often you want to make this point because that gives you the most coverage to keep to contain the back checker. So all of those things may go into it. So to why it's it's better. I think you asked, why is it worse than making the 2 point? Is that what you asked? Yeah. So yeah, both of them are kind of the wrong strategy anyway. But and I think making the 2 point, at least it's aggressive, and at least you put yourself in a position where if you get a little lucky, you can really capitalize on it with that greater gammons. You actually look at even the winning percentage is less for hitting the 2 point. But so if this was a DMP game, you actually make the 11 point over the 2 point. Still both be wrong, but the advantage with the 2 point is you have the gammons. It's a very aggressive move. You don't have the checkers to really carry it out, but you could still get lucky and carry it out anyway. A good attack. So I think those are the reasons why.
Gary, suppose that White was actually ahead in the race. Would then 2111 be the best? So move the checker from the 2413.
So yeah, black rolled the double 5s, and suppose that he didn't. He rolled. I don't know. We looks like white. So suppose yellow rolls a 3-1 to start, and then a 3-2, and black rolled a 5-3. Well, I don't know. Suppose that. So now we're behind. Okay, so now the race. We're not ahead in the race. So I would think that certainly racing ahead would move up a little bit. You still have the problems with the 2 point attacking. I would think that it's still the right play to make the bar point here, but I think they're going to be closer.
Obviously 2111 keeps things safe, but what I'm seeing is the 11 point is 6 away from the 5 point.
Yeah.
And it's not really bearing on the points you want to make. You know, if it were the 10 point and bearing on the 4,
Yeah.
it would be more attractive to have 2 checkers for there. Right now, kind of like the only good thing it can do is help make the 7 or help make the 9.
Yeah.
In and of itself, it's not a great point.
Yeah, not for, I mean, again, yeah, any point has value, but its value is diminished, I guess. So let's just see what the answer was here. Now we're gonna go very slow. Yeah, it's still making this. These, I think that was better than before. But still, it's still wrong. It's still the same order. I think it is a little compressed. I just curious, we move this one up here. This one up here. Now this point is much more valuable. Let's see if that matters. And now it's the right play. And obviously we can't make the bar point now. So now these two are basically the same. Because you still have the same problem, although with this checker being up a little bit, you're a little bit better off. But you still have the same problem with only nine checkers in the zone with the 2 point. And here you're going to be 12 pips up in the race, and you're making a good point in terms of developing the prime, either the 9 or 7, or extending your inner board. So, you know that. So you know, those are part of the reason why this is a better play here to make the 10 point than it was to make the 11. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. So, what are the good plays?
Making the 5 point or hitting and covering the 4 point.
Yeah. Can't see anything else.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I suppose you could hit twice, but that looks a bit silly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll give you a hint. That's a big blunder. Also in the book is interesting in that it provides 3 or 4 options. So one of the options he gives you is this play, making the 3 point.
Hmm.
Hopefully you find that kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because that's clearly wrong. So yeah, but that's right. The question is, do you make the 5 point? Or do you make the 4 point hitting black, of course?
So I mean, I think in favor of making the 5 and just leaving the 4 slotted.
Yeah.
I think we want to make the pure play because we're behind in the race. And 2, you know, black has sort of that awkward stacked structure and, you know, isn't going to be able to probably, you know, prime us. Our back checkers aren't really in much danger of getting trapped. So I think we're okay playing like a longer, you know, priming game. So I think that's what I would play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus
Any other
that
reason?
unstacks the 6 point.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, I was going to
checkers
say
on the
that
6
too.
point really want to go to the 5.
Yeah. Back to the opening concept. Yeah, unstacking. You have a 1, you almost always want 6 to 5. So let's look at the answer. And it is making the 5 point, and actually it's a blunder to not do that. The explanation from the book is in the opening phase, you should try to develop quickly and gain a significant advantage that could eventually allow you to send the cube, even at the risk of leaving direct shots, provided they are not fatal. So yeah, so this is another example where you're you're taking a risk to develop a long-term advantage by also making the 4. One of a number of the positions that we looked at last week, there, I don't know if you remember if you said it explicitly, but there's the strength of the 4, 5, 6 prime is something that's worth taking the risk for. So we saw a lot of cases where, you make, you slot either the 4 or the 5 point in order to make that the 4, 5, 6 points on your inner board. So here, this is just another case of that. And this is a case where the the concepts are helpful, but they don't give you necessarily the right answer here. Because yes, you want to fight for the good point. So obviously you're going to hit there. And the question is, but the 4 point is a good point too. We know that the 5 point is better, but is it worth sliding the 4 point, I guess? Part may be also that we know that we would like to unstack the 6. All those things get factored in, but they're hard to sort out. So this is sort of, but in this case, I think the idea is good that he has, that Tardieu has, is that look for the long-term permanent advantage, look for the structure, and particularly when it's something like the 4, 5, 6, you want to take that little extra risk is worth doing, and don't get bogged down into the secondary factors. And often when we have all the concepts and tools that we look at, those can be unstacking 6 is probably a secondary factor, but it's still not unimportant. Okay, one thing I was looking at is, he does say with the caveat, at the risk of leaving shots, provided these are not too fatal. So I was kind of wondering, what is a fatal risk? And so what if black had the 5 point? And so we look at that, and it's still, but you see it's closer. And so what if black had the 5 and the 4? Do you want to risk that one? And the answer is it's a wash. So what if black has the 3 point? Now, is that too much? And the answer is no, actually. In fact, surprisingly, this is better than not having it. So didn't look at this one yet. This one, I would think you would probably want to play a little bit safer. Oh, well, that didn't work. That's too yeah, so here, but it's still very close. So when he puts the caveat out, even if the risk of leaving a direct shock, provided it's not fatal, maybe that would be considered fatal.
I think here you're just losing so much anyway. You're not like risking that much.
Yeah.
It's obviously very bad if you get hit, but it's very bad anyway.
Yeah. So so I would interpret fatal to mean deep trouble. Let's see if that okay, it's still here it's a blunder. Yeah, 3 point board. Yeah. So the fact that we have a point back here prevents it from being quote unquote fatal, even though it's not very good to get hit. Okay, let's not put too much time on that one. Okay, another 3-1 to play. This is actually a fairly common one. And
It's very well known. I'm certain it's make the 5 point.
this one everyone I think should get. It's a fairly common play, but I should say that you should know that in this type of situation, you're not going to hit, you're going to make the 5 point. I think that's not the issue. The question is, do you make the 4 point instead? Is it better to make the 5 point here or the 4 point here? And so that's I think that's the bigger question. And under what circumstances would you make are there circumstances where you would make the 4 point instead of the 5 point? And I'll let you know here, it's the right answer here is to make the 5 point. But it's not that wrong. Now, we have the rule, which actually Michi sort of said, I sort of condensed it, but the points priority, where you want to make the 5 point. The 5 point is better than the 4, is better than the 7. The offensive 5 is better than the defensive 5, better than the offensive 4 and 4. So it's 5, 5, 4, 4, 7, 7. So here, we're making the inferior. Yeah, if we made the 4 point, we'd make the inferior point. On the other hand, black's got 10 checkers in the zone, and so you are risking being attacked here with all the checkers in the zone. Now, his attack is much less effective if we make the 5 point. So there is that. But what if we had this? What if black had that? Now the danger is even bigger for being attacked, because black has the 5 point, and he's got, there are nine rolls of point here. Any idea whether that's going to be an exception, that we make the 4 rather than the 5?
I think that's probably enough to swing it, because even if we don't get attacked, we're still getting primed, and the 21 points the best thing we can do to, sort of push back on that.
Yeah. The question is, is that enough? Is that, and the answer is it is more than enough. Like now it's a blunder not to make the 4 point here. So, these are all things to keep in mind. A lot of the problems, a number of problems you have, you move a few checkers around and it makes a big difference. I think it's important to understand what the difference is. Now, back to his explanation, which I don't. I'll read the explanation that Mr. Tardieu gives. He says, when faced with the option of making 2 key points, focus on the one that is most difficult to build naturally, and if possible, in the area where you have the most ground to make up on your opponent. So that's not what I would look at. It's not what I've been talking about. But he has a point in that you're making the 5 point here, you've got only a few numbers that do it. Double 3s, double 4s, double 1s, 3, 1. That's like 5 numbers. Here, here you've got a number of good options for the back to make a point. It's not just making the 4 point. You could also make the 5 point with a 4-2, the 6 point with a 6-4. Double 1s or double 2s can make either the 5 or the 3. Just a plain 2 gives you the 3 point, which, that's not as, obviously not as strong, but it is a point, and it's a decent point. But that's the case where I don't, that explanation doesn't really ring that true to me. I mean, it's good, it is a good point, but I would look at other things like, this stronger point. You really want to make that. Also, you really want to unstack these. You're really stacked on the 8 and the 6 too. Didn't mention that. That's probably not the most important point, but or the other rule that we come across, I think it was David Press rule, was, if you're not going to make the 5 point, you better do at least 2 or 3 other really good things. And in this case, we've got one good thing we can do.
And Brown has 10 checkers in the zone. It's a little scary, but he's only got a 1 point board.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And even if he points on us on the 22, we're not dead.
Yeah. Yes. That, and even if he does point on the 22 with the 5-3 or something like that, we still have the better board than he does. So that goes back to the kind of the bold safe argument, where we don't have the point yet, but we can play bolder, because after the roll we'll have a better board. And then sometimes that's just enough to push it over. Okay, let's go to the next one. 4-3 to play. I see a couple of good options. What are the best options here to consider?
Hit and run, or make our 5 point.
Yeah, you can hit and run to safety. from here. One on the bar, and in this case, we're ahead in the race. We've got a slightly better board, so that's certainly an option. The other option,
Make 5 point.
yeah, make the 5 point. So what do you think is right?
Don't know.
I mean, I think that, I mean, it reminds me of, Michi's, back checker strategy when we have an advanced anchor and the other, the opponent just is still on the 24 point. The goal is to just build a prime in you. I think the phrase is just win naturally or win by default or something like that. So I think we just make the 5 here and don't give them a chance to turn it around.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Michi. Yeah, back checker strategy. This is where Michi's concept is a little bit different than McGrill. So McGrill says, okay, you've got this anchor, you play boldly. Of course, part of it too is when you hit, you're giving up your anchor. You're giving up the 5 point anchor. So that's something else to consider too, is that after the play, you've given up your anchor and you haven't made the 5 point. So when you go through like the presser rule, you got to do at least 2 or 3 good things. If you're not going to make your 5 point, you've actually done something that's kind of bad, in that you've given up the 5 point.
Right.
Yeah, so that's good, and you've gone way up in the race, so that's good. But you've also done that, and yeah. So the answer is make the 5 point, and it's not close. And I'll read Tardieu's explanation. He says in the opening, always bear in mind that the play that gets you close to sending the cube is often the correct choice, and that one will maximize your equity. Yeah, I wouldn't do it for that reason. I don't, that's again, he certainly, I think that's correct, and that's usually the right way. But to me, I look at it more as you make your 5 point. You also, again, this is a place where you make the 4, 5, and 6 point. That's a really strong position to have. You really want to do that, and you want to take some risks doing that. And you take a risk by giving up your 8 point essentially.
Right. Well, you notice the play that we had as the alternative is the 3rd best play, actually, not even the 2nd best play.
That's a good point too. Let's look at them. Yeah, we didn't bring up the 2nd best play, which is to just simply make the 9 point, and bring another checker down. Into the another checker into the zone. Looking, because this is a strong priming play.
Right.
Although making the 5 point is also somewhat of a priming play, but it's also priming and attacking. But yeah, that's a good point, that this is better, making the 9 point. That's often true too, is to make a point in the outfield has value. And this is, again, we talked about 6 pips away. This one is right where we would want it to be. The 10 point here would be less valuable than the 9, and the 11 would be more valuable than 10 as well, for that matter. But okay. So this is a tricky one that I have to say I would get wrong. Until after having looked at this through this book. So what do we, lots of good things we can do here. What looks right?
24, 18, 8, 7.
Okay. You're talking about split and cover, yeah. Yeah, what we haven't talked a lot about splitting rules. Here's a case where splitting comes into play. You have a sign to split. It's fairly strong. Your opponent has split, so that's usually you want to split when you do that. On the other hand, your opponent has 10 checkers in the zone, so but usually when your opponent split, you also want to split. So seems like you can split and cover that, cover the bar point. I might come down from 13 to 7 and split one, do the minor split in the back. That's another way to, the same idea. Any other place?
Well, the 5 point, which if the Browns checkers weren't split, I think that'd be a slam dunk. With the split, it makes it a little bit more difficult, but it may be right.
Yeah, again, we're looking, making the 5 point. Again, you gotta.
That
Black
looks
is
good.
always strong, and you're bringing it, you're unstacking to 6, and the obvious drawback here is the double shot on the bar point.
Mhm. Yep.
So any other thoughts?
It's
Any
a
smaller-
long-term asset to make the 5 point, and they don't make any, if they hit, they don't make any headway. 3s and 6s are good on the other side.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
they can't
Good point.
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, in fact, okay, so that's actually the explanation that Tardieu gives, is that he says you have to leave a shot, use duplication to maximize your opponent's good rolls. I find that also a secondary reason. I think the idea that, okay, you have a long-term asset here, that's far more important than leaving the secondary shots. But it is true. Look, 3s and 6s hit. 3s and 6s make the point on this side too. So now if he gets a 6-3, Black gets to decide, Black's not going to make his 5 point. He's probably going to make the bar point to hit his back, but you prevented him from doing something. So there is something to that. That's mostly, unless hitting is fatal, that's mostly a secondary consideration. Here, I think it's still, well, this is a good example. It's still right to make the 5 point. You have much less duplication here because now you have 4s and 6s. Although I guess 4s and 6s could make that point, so that's something. But here, it's the up and down, or the down and split, that are now very close.
Mhm.
So that's sort of the power of duplication. I get, I sort of dismiss it. I guess I'm less dismissive now than having seen this, having talked through this than I was before. But I think it's still, you're still making the 5 point. And so to me, this long-term structure of making that 5 point is what's really driving this. And which is not to say that duplication is not important. I mean, those were minor errors if you covered instead of making the 5 point. And in this case, it's a fairly big blunder to not make the 5 point. And the duplication takes it from a blunder to a small error. So
Suppose Black had owned his own 5 point. How would that change this, you think?
yeah. So now, what do you think, Jeff?
I don't know. That's why I asked.
Okay, without
That
duplication,
makes the risk of getting hit
doesn't matter.
popular.
Mhm.
So there are a couple things going on. First of all, the duplication doesn't matter here anymore because the 3 has no value.
Right.
There's no duplicating the 3. Then the 6 does to a certain extent, but to a lesser extent, because it's only this 6, it's not making the 5 point. Also, what comes into play is that, okay, now Black has the better board. And
Right. That's the part I was thinking about.
yeah. So that's a problem. So I would, in this case, I think I would cover.
Yeah,
Mhm.
me too. Also,
Probably.
one more thing to consider is that the way you made the 5, he's now thin on the 8, so splitting is
Yeah,
helpful.
that right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you have another sign to split here. In this, the Black having split. Now that the 8 point is tripped, that's another reason to split. But would you split coming to 24-23 or 24-18? You do.
24-23.
Yeah, I think I would too. Let's see if that's right. No.
Right.
That's point to something else.
Yeah, so Well, at least if we're going to split, that was right, rather than,
Yeah,
oops. Yeah, so, in this case, I would definitely have made the bar point and not made the 5 point. But this play is not a blunder, at least. This play is a blunder. Um,
yeah, because it's just too much ammo.
Don't know exact. Well, okay, I do. I think I do know why. In this case, with this play, now you've got more checkers, spares to make the 5 point.
Yeah.
2 here, and then in the pinch you can use the 8 or the 7. Whereas in this case, you can't really make the 5 point.
Right, right. Also, and actually my first thought, which wasn't as good as yours, was that there's also more ammo to hit us on the 18 there. He's got a ton of ammo out there.
Yeah, he's got 3 triple
Right.
shot, yeah. Which now with a better board makes him stronger to do that.
And so now can you take a point from a checker from the 6 point and move it back to the 8 and run it one more time? That was good.
So keep it at the 5, but
Move it from the 6 point back, yeah, to the 8.
yeah, okay.
So we know, I don't think that's going to make a one whit of difference, but that was my original thought of making the 5 point.
Yeah, well, I think you wouldn't want to come out
At all, yeah.
at
Yeah.
all. And so that is true. The dynamics didn't change much. It's still making the 5. And actually this didn't make much difference either. So yeah, so it didn't really make any difference in the order of the plays or the relative strength.
Yeah, 5 point is it's golden.
Yep. Okay, last one for today.
The answer is make the 5 point.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, I was just joking, but it probably is the right answer.
Yeah, so here, what can we do here?
You can double hit.
Yep, from the 8.
Mm-hmm.
Tiger play, and from Ricci's rules, you've got 10 checkers in the zone, so attacking with 10 is strong, attacking with 8 is weak.
Yeah, I'm making the 5 point ease. Hear this.
But so you can make the 5 point, certainly. You have to consider that, and
The 9 point.
you could also make the 9 point safety in this checker. You are up in the race, and covering a blot is nice. And the 9 point is a good point to make.
Yeah, and it's 6 in front of the 3 point, so it's not a bad point.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, covers 2 blots and makes a strong point. So that's good. And of course, making 5. Any idea what the
Well, to me, the theme of the night has been if you can make the 5 point, especially by using a 1 from the 6 point, that's the right answer.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. And here's the case. I'll read his explanation again, but here's the case, you make the 5 point. That's kind of like your first priority. And what he has said in these explanations, well, to some extent he did. The long-term structure of that 5 point is very important. And so that's worth taking risk in other places. So you're leaving a direct shot here and a handful of shots here. So you're going to give up a lot of shots, but you've made the 5 point, you've unstacked to 6. He doesn't talk about that, but I think that's that adds to it. Again, I think the bigger thing is, the long-term structural advantage you get from doing that is worth the risk early on. Now, his explanation here is saying making the 5 point is frequently a better choice than an outfield point, especially if it leaves you with good distributions to further improve your position. Well, that's certainly true, but I think he misses the point of, doesn't discuss, okay, you're giving up shots here, and you're ahead in the race, but you're gonna be behind if you get hit. And I think it's the long-term structural advantage here of making of the 5 point that to do it. And I think the rules that we have were, fight for the good point, make the 5 point. Is I think the better explanation or easier to understand, and then even if you're not gonna make the 5 point, you better do two other good things, two or three others. And actually, in this case, you could do two good things with this play. You clean up a blot and make a good point. But and this is sort of, by looking at this, you see that, okay, that's good, but it's not quite good enough. It's one thing, when you say two or three good things, it's you have to sort of weigh out as to how good it is. And so, covering a blot, early on when your opponent has no board is it's a good thing. It would probably be, if you had this, that may be a different answer. Not too much, but well, it's close. Now it's closer. Now this is a very good thing. Whereas when black didn't have a strong board, it was just, a good thing. So here, if we look at the rule, if you're not gonna make the 5 point, you better do two good things. These are two good things here, covering a blot and making a good point. Whereas here, making this point is still a good thing, but they aren't quite the same good quality of good, I guess, or not quite as strong or necessary as when black had this really strong board. So anyway, the point of going through examples like this is to really to get a feel for these rules, to kind of put your rules and your thought process in contrast or context, and get a sense of what things are stronger, what things are going to come into play, are more important in certain situations than others. So and I think that's the good thing about the problems that he gives, is that these force you to think about it. And again, the explanation he provides, I think, are true. I just like to put them in together with all the other things that we learned. So if you know Michi's rules, those are foundational, and now you can have these problems will help you sort out which is more important in certain circumstances, and in which cases you kind of override the basic thing. Okay, let's leave it that.